Hello, everyone. My name is Shama, and with Girls and Ds, we're back for yet another edition of our Next Generation series, where we interview young, up-and-coming women and get to know them a little bit, get their perspectives, understand what makes them tick and what makes them drive, and how they got involved in the jiu-jitsu and martial art world. So today, we have a very special guest on. We're super excited to get to know Kylie Hunts-in-Winter a little bit better. You may also know her by Brave Women on Instagram. She has a fantastic profile that is designed to empower and uplift and promote women in martial arts and fitness. And so we're super excited to take this opportunity to get to know you a little bit better today. So thank you for being on today, Kylie.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Girls and Geese has always been a huge part of my life. I went to some of the first Girls and Geese events before it was even called that at the Petite Inspire, and it's meant so much to me. I feel like for me with jujitsu too, I think right when I started was when like all of the women like actually started being represented, and it was so amazing to see and being able to grow up with that.
Excellent. And I know you've been a part of our Arizona community for a long time, so it's really an honor to have you kind of grow up. You were the little girl in Gi that grew up to become a woman now
Yeah.
alongside with us. So how did you tell us a little bit about yourself first off. I know you're over on the East Coast
Yeah.
now.
Right. So I grew up in Arizona. I started training in martial arts when I was 3 years old in Kempo karate, where at first I did that just Kempo until I was about 8 years old when they started having jujitsu at my gym. And I actually remember like when I started the classes, they were only allowing like 12 and up or 10 and up or something like that. And they made a special exception for me because I was only 8, but they knew that the main thing was just like kids who would focus in class, and they're like, Kylie will do fine. And so I started jujitsu as at first the only girl in the class with a bunch of like 10, 12-year-old boys. Um, and it was so different for me from karate. It's like, even still, it's just an absolutely different world. Like people might think they're so similar, but they're really not. And then I started training in judo to kind of supplement my jujitsu, and I got into some judo competition as well. I've done Muay Thai, wrestling. I did Goju Shoi weapons. I've done a bit of MMA. I have national and world championships in karate and jujitsu, as well as national championship in judo. So I've probably done like over 200 tournaments in my life. And so martial arts has been a huge part of it. And then of course my page Brave Woman that I started a couple of years ago, where I support women who do martial arts and fitness all around the world. And I share other people's stories alongside my own, but the main goal of it is to empower others. Um, my family is from the Standing Rock Sioux Dakota Lakota tribe. And so that's actually where the name Brave Woman comes from. It was the name given to me by the medicine man when I was a baby. And so my culture is a huge part of it as well. Currently, I'm living in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where I'm a first year student at Harvard College.
Wow. That is phenomenal. Like you've lived so many lives just within your short time. That is
Yeah.
excellent. So how did you get into martial arts? Was someone in your family already in martial arts and that kind of led into your introduction into karate?
It was actually my dad wanting me to be able to defend myself. I've always been the person in the family like most in martial arts, and every member of my family has done it, but I was the first one actually. So like I think every girl can relate to like there's always those doubters out there, and like even people who may not think they're being so negative. Like my own grandpa was like, "Oh, this is just gonna be a phase, and she'll quit." My first instructor, who I love so much and has been there for me, when the day I walked in, she was like, "This girl's never gonna last. She's never gonna stick with it." But of course, here I am today.
Despite. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So I know you do a lot of different martial arts, like, and I might be hard for you to pick a favorite, but which what would you say is your favorite, or do you have one, or what are the benefits or pros and cons to all of
Right.
them that if you can't make a decision between them all?
Kind of like I said, jujitsu and karate I did specifically Kempo, but it's pretty much karate, are so similar that it's almost really too hard to compare them. However, I Kempo holds a special place in my heart because of how much time I did it, and I have my black belt in Kempo, so it does mean a lot to me, but at the moment, I would say it's jujitsu. Judo was kind of more like a phase for me. I still, like, use it in my jiu-jitsu game, but, like, I don't go to classes, and the kind of the same thing with Muay Thai, those were more supplementary personally. So, and the thing that I love about jiu-jitsu is that it never ends. Like, with Kempo, I loved it so much, but after I got my black belt, it was more just teaching, which I love teaching and I love helping, but it's also, like, it's very structured, like, there's not more you can do, whereas jiu-jitsu, it's, like, forever developing.
Yeah. I say jujitsu is, and this is my perspective, maybe you agree with me or not, but like it gives a lot more room for creativity and
Yeah.
kind of playing with things and seeing what works for you. And whereas other martial arts that I've tried, it was very like, this is the striking, this is the kicking.
Mm.
And there's not a whole lot of this kind of room for creative expression, I guess, self-expression, right? So
Yeah, exactly. Jiu-jitsu is, like, what I always recommend to people who wanna start in martial arts, especially women, because it is, like, one of the few sports where you can be really tiny and beat someone twice your size just because you have the right technique. And, like, for me, like, people always be like, "Oh my god, Kylie, you're so strong." And, like, sure, I'm not, like, weak, but I'm not, like, that strong. I just know how to use my body weight, and I know how to do the techniques correctly.
absolutely, the leverage.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a big part of it. No, awesome. So now you're off, you're on your own. Are you able to train as much now that you're a full-time student at Harvard? I mean, I'm sure that's got to be a huge load that you are carrying there at
Yeah.
school.
Yeah, right now it's the week before spring break, so I've got midterms and papers coming up, so I have so much going on right now. Also, we tomorrow's housing day, which is like Harvard has like houses that are like Harry Potter pretty much kind of, except for they're random and so I'll find out where I live for the next 3 years tomorrow morning. So there's a lot going on right now and it definitely does hinder my ability to train. The only thing I'm consistently training in right now is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because we actually have a Harvard Jiu-Jitsu club.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, we have a phenomenal black belt instructor, Ruan from Brazil, and he's great. And it has really helped me actually feel at home here at Harvard because it's so different from Arizona. And a lot of the people here are like already from the East Coast, so it's like not that different. I've met maybe like 3 people from Arizona, and it's like jujitsu really is like a home for me. So it has hindered my ability to train. I've went to boxing a couple of times to just kind of keep up with my striking, but like Kempo, it's so restrictive. I can't nobody else teaches the same techniques around the world in Kempo, whereas Jiu-Jitsu, you can just train anywhere.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. That's excellent. You're able to keep involved, and it's right there accessible. I think that
Yeah.
shows a testament how jujitsu's kind of evolved in its own, that now it's being offered at universities like Harvard. I mean, that's pretty
Yeah.
amazing. That it's become more widespread. Whereas, 10, 15 years ago, it was kind of like this, oh, jujitsu, what's that?
Yeah,
kind of thing.
exactly.
So that's amazing. I love asking girls like yourself how, we see a lot of little girls that come into jujitsu, and then by the time they hit like their early preteens, you see them kind of dropping off.
Yeah.
Was there ever a point, in transitioning from being a little girl into teenage years into an adult woman now, that maybe it was like there were certain struggles that came along during that transition growing up?
Yeah, I definitely was, especially for me, it was more of I did have a phase where I wasn't as passionate about it, but I would still go to class and I was just not really in the right mental state. And it got to the point where my coach was even like, he kind of just stopped trying. He was like, he helped me obviously, but he wasn't like gonna push because he knew that that was something that I had to figure out for myself. And that was like when I was in my early teen years. I actually did online school all of middle school through high school. So I did that initially, it was actually so that I could train for my black belt because I couldn't get my Kempo black belt till I was 16, and I couldn't get my blue belt till I was 16 as well. And so I was training like 6, 7 days a week, 30 hours a week, teaching and training with the young kids and with adults. And it was just a lot on me. And I also was missing some of that social aspect that I think a lot of other people will get wrapped up into. And so what happened for me is I went to this trade school called EVIT, where I had the opportunity to do like part-time in-person school and still do my online school. And then when I got into that, I was like, oh my God, I made friends and I was hanging out with them all the time and I wasn't getting to training as much. And then my coaches were like, where did you go? Like that was so unlike me. And then when I came back, it was like, I remember actually the first day I went back to jujitsu after a couple, like maybe 2 months or something, it was so relieving. Like the way that I was able to forget all of my worries. Like I forgot like how much you just really in the zone when you're there. And it means a lot to me. And there were definitely multiple times where it's difficult, especially after over 15 years in the arts. It's a lot, but it's still always a home you come back to.
Absolutely. Do you have any advice for young girls that might be going through that transitional age, might be dealing with puberty's rough, for everybody. It's not, and it's
Yeah.
really uncomfortable when you're a little girl and you're doing jujitsu and you get paired up with little boys or men or whatever. For little girls that are going through the challenges of growing up in jujitsu, what advice would you say to them?
Oh, there's so many things I could say. There's so many things that happen, especially like I've seen so many people come and go from the martial arts, but then also because of that, I've had the opportunity to meet so many different kinds of people who train. And I could just say, like stand your ground and stick up for yourself, but like it's not always that simple. It's not always that easy. Like I appreciate people who tell us to like speak up and use your voice because you should, but I also don't think that it should be overly simplified because not everybody has that ability. Like um, if I ever feel uncomfortable with somebody that I'm training with, I will maybe even though I still feel comfortable speaking up, I also don't like confrontation. And so I'll just try to suggest like, "Hey, your hand isn't supposed to be there. It's supposed to be lower on my leg. Like that's where you should be grabbing." And I'll say it like that instead of so aggressively. And I think that some people don't think of that because like that hasn't been presented to them, but there's easier ways that you can deal with certain situations if you are feeling stressed about it. And of course, if you're ever uncomfortable, there is always the option of speaking to somebody else who will help you, because I have a more struggle speaking up for myself, but if it's for somebody else, I will just straight out say it. I'll be like, no, like you need to stop, leave them alone, please. Or even in just the small things. Being a young girl in martial arts, it can be really awkward, it can be really weird. I started training in the adult classes when I was only 12 years old, like 100 pounds. Like I was so tiny fighting these grown men, and they were sometimes it's like, yeah, there's the guys who will go too rough on you and then hurt you, but there's also the people who go way too light on you and you just feel like they don't appreciate you. They don't think that you actually have talent. Like when I was a bit older, I was fighting this purple belt, and then he goes, "Wow, you're like actually good." I was like,
Oh
"Yeah, I am."
gosh. Thank you for noticing.
Yeah. So I guess for advice, honestly, I would just say stick it out, stay strong, talk to people about it because I guarantee that you're not alone. And even if there are maybe some of the guys at the gym who make you uncomfortable, there's also going to be those good guys. And obviously women will help you too, but also if you don't have those options, just speak to somebody, speak to your coach, speak to a friend. Even somebody who's not in martial arts might just be able to help you feel more at peace with the situation.
Absolutely. No, that's some great advice. I'm curious, did you have any women role models, with jujitsu, martial arts outside that really, I mean, you're such a strong young lady and you're so like clear on what how you see the world and what you want to change. Did you have any women in your life that kind of inspired you to go along the paths that you have through life?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of things. Like I always looked up to my coaches, definitely. There were multiple women black belts at my dojo and like specifically more in karate because that's when I was younger. Which was really like now looking back, that was a great privilege that I had because most people don't have that. There were at least like 4 or 5 women black belts in my gym, and that's not a normal thing, even for karate, even though karate is a bit more widespread. Um, and then when I started doing jujitsu, uh, I remember actually going when I went to the first Petit Inspire, like I was able to see Mackenzie Dern and Christina Barlon, and being surrounded by all these women in jiu-jitsu, honestly, that was one of my huge inspirations. Is just being able to see that there are other people who understand and other people who have those experiences, and also seeing how much it means to others. So yeah, there are people that I do want to follow in the footsteps of, but I also don't want to just be a replica, because I think the big thing is creating change and creating the new environment that we all need to be living in. So, although my inspiration did come from some people, I don't know if there's anybody specifically other than I did look up a lot. I remember to Ronda Rousey because when I was little, I wanted a pink gi in karate and they didn't sell them when I was like 5. Like that wasn't even a thing. My dad bought me a white gi and dyed it pink. And I
Oh,
remember like, yeah, like, just so that I could have that, and I remember seeing a magazine article of Ronda Rousey wearing a pink gi, and I was like, "Those exist now? That's so cool, like, that's crazy." And, like, just things like that where you want people other people understand you, and I wanted to create an environment where people can feel heard, and that's kind of where Brave Woman came from.
and I think you definitely are for sure. I remember that so you had a unique opportunity. So you came up as a child into a woman during a time where women were really starting to carve out their spot in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So that's pretty
Yeah.
phenomenal. So you got to see it from a child's perspective coming up. And how do you think that kind of impacted you as you developed into a woman? I know you talked about seeing these women and them kind of inspiring you, but how did are there any other ways that it kind of impacted you watching this sport evolve into what it's becoming and also growing into a woman through the process of that?
Yeah, I definitely do think it gave me this certain amount of confidence because, yeah, like you said, I am very like centered on my goals and I know what I want to do and I know what I want to say. And part of that is, I guess, just my natural personality, but a huge part of it is from being in the martial arts, the sense, like, not just a sense of discipline, but the fact that it's all up to you in a sense, but also that other people know how that feels and are there to support you because you can't do it without other people. That's a huge thing about jujitsu is that we all rely on each other. Like, sure, you can do all the drills you want by yourself, but it doesn't mean that's going to work on someone because they're not going to be resisting. Um, and like, I remember specifically one of my good friends I've known for a long time, Nina Sandoval. I met her at, I believe it was my very first jujitsu tournament, and when I was 8 or 9 years old, us two little white belt girls. She was about a year younger than me, and although it was my first tournament, she had been training since she was younger because her parents are black belts. And but it was her first time ever fighting against a girl. And Nina demolished me because it was my first tournament and she's really good. Like now she's a state champion wrestler and like she's going to a great wrestling school. Like Nina's phenomenal. And I actually train with her now today back in Arizona. But
Awesome.
it's crazy seeing, I think me and her kind of had very similar experiences with Brazilian Jiu Jitsu because we both saw how like how it's developed. So I was going from having one single girl to be able to fight, being her first ever girl match because before that she had to fight in the boys divisions, going from having packed women's divisions at the tournaments. And honestly, I think that's one of the biggest things that I've seen is the change in the tournament environment. Also, more in a personal sense, when I first started competing, my dojo wasn't there to support me. I like, it's just because nobody else was at the tournaments, and so my coaches didn't show up just for one person. And I actually had to get coached by a different team who I knew them. Her name was also Kylie Anderson. I knew her from the karate tournaments, and I knew that their gym also did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so they coached me because I didn't have anybody else there for me. So
Yeah.
just being able to see that shift in, it's, I guess it did give me the sense of independence and strength that I've had to have, but it also, like, inspires me to want to not have to have other people go through it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And with that, what are some of your goals? I know you're all about in supporting and promoting other women, but do you have any goals I guess moving forward with Brave Woman that you want to, specifically like these are some causes that I really want to get behind and start and promote or anything. You tell me.
Yeah, one of the more recent things that I've done with Brave Woman, or I guess I've used the Brave Woman name, but it's not so much on the social media account, because I guess Brave Woman is like a lot of things. It's my name, it's the martial arts page, his name, and it's kind of the entity of me and like what I do to support and empower women, right? But also, on a side note, it's really interesting how some people have like come, which I wasn't my initial intention, but they'll be like, they think that they are brave women. And I really like that people like kind of took their own interpretation to it, which I love, and I fully support that. So one of the more recent projects that I've had is in support of the missing and murdered Indigenous women's movement, where I've taught free self-defense classes for Native American women all around the country, primarily in Arizona, but I've traveled up to Montana, where I went to an all-girls summer camp and taught classes there. I traveled to Georgia and did a conference there. I went up to North Dakota, where I actually was doing a photo shoot with photographer Shane Balkowicz, who his most famous photo is one of Greta Thunberg at the Standing Rock Reservation during the Dakota Access Pipeline protests. And I had the wonderful opportunity to photograph with him. And right before my photographs, or before or after, I don't recall, but in his backyard, I taught a self-defense class for Native American women where I only posted about it the day before on Facebook, and about 30 people showed up, and apparently over 150 interests. People were commenting like, man, I wish that I could go, but I just have to work tomorrow. I have to get my kid from school. And that is like, in Arizona, it's amazing teaching those classes. But because there are so many Indigenous people in Arizona and the resources, I don't think that people appreciated it as much. Like, of course, some people did, but less people appreciated it. Whereas up in North Dakota, they obviously don't have those resources. Somebody told me that she she tried to take her daughters to a gym, but she just honestly didn't feel comfortable. But when she saw that a fellow Indigenous woman and a person is coming to teach these classes, that she just felt really welcomed. So I guess with Brave Women, I want to continue doing what I'm doing. I want to continue supporting women in martial arts, but I also want to be able to use it as a forum for continuing my activism with missing and murdered Indigenous women, as well as I'm actually taking a class here at Harvard about it's called Human Trafficking, Slavery, and Abolition, about human trafficking in the modern world and what is happening today, whether it be sex trafficking, immigration, or manual labor, forced marriages. There's so many forms of human trafficking that many people aren't aware of. And among all of those topics, I've found ways to kind of connect them all to each other. And I love that I can connect my martial arts, my Indigenous identity, and my activism in all of these subjects. So when it comes to Brave Women, I want to keep doing what I'm doing. I want to keep training in martial arts and getting my story out there. And I also hope that it will give me the opportunity to move more into these other subjects that I'm hoping to help in.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Those are some fantastic things to be advocating. I mean, all of them are an epidemic. It's horrible. Especially during the pandemic. Human trafficking, I think, went to an all-time high in the U.S. And I remember being in Texas, and my Amber Alert was just going off over and over and over again, and you're just hearing these horrible stories because all the kids were home, right? They were unsupervised and they're at home. And so I'm curious, what are you going to put this Harvard education to use? What are you getting your degree in? And where are we going to see you going? Because it sounds like there's some really amazing things ahead.
Yeah, I've been so back and forth on that. Like my advisor too, she was like, Kylie, what are you going to concentrate in? It's kind of interesting. Harvard calls them concentrations instead of majors. Personally, I think they just do that so that they could be different because they're Harvard. They want a cool name for their majors. That's kind of what they do here. But I'm not 100% sure. Currently, I've taken a lot of sociology and social studies classes. So I definitely want to stay in that route. Those are my two major options right now, is either sociology or social studies. The difference being that sociology is more like it is the kind of the same thing, but the difference is social studies allows me to focus on kind of whatever I want. And they said like you can take what classes you want, and then the only requirement is that they have to be put into a singular senior thesis. But I don't feel like writing a really long senior thesis, so I might do sociology. There is also the option that I do a specialized concentration, which I'm not sure if I'm a bit eligible for, which what I would want to do is to be able to learn about how to make an impact more and be able to go into nonprofit work and activism and make that into an actual career, but also to learn how to actually make an impact, because there's a lot that you can do and just say things. And although I think people say like, well, if you just say words, like it's not going to do anything. I don't think that's true fully, because I do think that it creates awareness. However, if that's all you're doing, that's where the issue comes across. But it is important to still bring up issues, of course, so that there's awareness. So I guess I where I want to go with it is honest staying down the path that I'm in, whether it's in the media, getting my voice out there about the things that are important to me and important for other people. I initially just thought like, oh, maybe I'll go into government and like try to pass laws. And I still do want to have an impact there. Um, but I've realized the limitations that come with being in office. And so I think that I can have more of an impact being on the outside and advocating for whatever it is that I'm doing at the time.
Have you ever thought about law?
Somewhat, yeah.
I could see you doing that.
Yeah.
And then you could have the activism along with the lawyer, education and understanding how the laws work when it comes to the activism. That's
Right.
I could see you going there.
Yeah, I definitely want to get at least somewhat of an education on it so that I can help with that.
Absolutely. No, I think right now, you're 19, 18.
Yeah.
So you're
19.
you're so young and you're on that path already. You've got a whole lot of time to figure it out,
Yeah.
and you're coming into it at a time where it's absolutely needed, for, young women, young children, Indigenous women, it's absolutely the time to be a part of it. Women are on the rise. And so I think we're going to see a huge shift, as you've seen throughout your life growing up just in the tiny little jujitsu world. We've seen a huge shift there, but jujitsu is just a small representation of the rest of the population, right? It's because it's happening everywhere. And so that's why we're seeing it in these little niches, because it's becoming more widespread, which is amazing. And women like yourself are going to take us to that next level, and on and on and on. So I'm happy that you're a part of that. I think you're going to take us places is what I'm trying to
Yeah, thank
say.
you.
So I'm going to close out with just one more. What if you could give anyone an advice when it comes to their martial arts journey, when it comes to going after their dreams in life, what piece of advice would you give, or what is the best piece of advice that maybe you've gotten that's really kind of stuck with you?
I remember actually back to that question that you mentioned before, about when I was having struggles with martial arts and being able to stay with it. I During that phase of my life, I had the opportunity to meet the UFC fighter Rose Namajunas. I hope I said that right. And I actually decided to bring that up to her, and I asked her. I said, like, what do you ever have times where you're feeling down when you don't feel like training? And like, if so, like, how do you deal with that? How do you get back your motivation? And what she told me was that I really needed to get back down to the root of things. Think about where my motivation initially came from, where it's lacking at now, and what I can do to help that. Whether if it's a serious reason why I'm not feeling like training or feeling like working hard, or if it's something deeper than that, or if maybe it's just, I just need to get my head in the game and keep working harder. But I guess that advice really stuck with me, and it made me think about so much how it is my own choice. And I think that's where the big thing is that people underestimate the power that they have over themselves and others in their environments, is that you have the choice to do anything that you want. But also, just because you're struggling doesn't mean that you have to give up. It just means that you have to find another way to do it.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree with that more. Well, I know why you were given the name, because you definitely are a brave woman, and it's an honor to have you a part of this tribe in jiu-jitsu. So we're super awesome, super excited to have women like yourselves moving us forward to the next level. And it was such an honor. I really enjoyed talking with you today. And I know you're
Yeah.
moving about in midterms and so thank you so much for taking time to be with us and to share your journey with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Girls and Geese has been a huge part of my journey too. So I'm so appreciative of you guys. I've definitely grown up with you. And so it's so great to see how everything's grown.
Thank you for being a part of it. You guys are the best part, and I was thinking about that today. I was like, I don't have any children of my own, but watching you girls grow up into the strong women that you're becoming, and just having a tiny little piece of contributing to helping that growth is such a huge honor, to be a part of that. So you guys are you make me proud.
Thank you.
If there's anything you'd like to plug, go ahead. Throw up your Instagram handle, any kind of nonprofit organizations or activist organizations that you want to support and bring awareness, go for it.
Yeah, if you guys want to get in contact with me, you can follow me on Instagram at bravewoman__, or if you want to see my personal account, it's at Kylie_Hunts-in-Winter to keep in contact with me. You can also email me at bravewomanmartialarts for any questions or inquiries, or just DM me on Instagram. Also, the photographer that I mentioned, Shane Balkowicz, he recently had his second series book, which he's doing a series of indigenous people in the northern plains of the United States, and with his modern wet plate photos that I had the opportunity of being able to photograph with him. So if you guys want to check out his book, it's a phenomenal series. But thank you guys so much for having me. I hope to see you guys soon.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next time.